Hey, it's Jordan with the Young Turks, TYT Politics. Special interview here. We have Flint Mayor Karen Weaver. Thanks for taking the time today.
Sure.
Finally, we get to sit down. I know a lot of you have been asking a lot of questions, and we wanted to put a face to the name. I just wanted to start generally, because I don't think a lot of people understand, watching nationally, that Flint, Michigan has emergency manager laws, obviously,
right.
And Flint's been under emergency manager, I believe, since 2011. And in 2015, they kind of put away the emergency manager, but created the Receivership Transition Advisory Board, which kind of, to a lot of other people, are complicated.
Right.
What, as mayor, what do you have control of, and what don't you have control of?
Well, actually, I'm glad you brought up the emergency manager law, because that's really what got this whole mess going, was we had been under an emergency manager. And while we have some power back, we don't have complete power back. So under the emergency manager law, what happened was the power was taken from the mayor and the city council. And there was one person that made all of the decisions for the city of Flint. And they kind of even got rid of most of the staffing at the city of Flint, because you don't need those extra bodies if one person is making all of the decisions. So really it was like a dictatorship, because your voice was taken, your democracy was taken, and this person reported to the governor and made all of the decisions on behalf of the people of Flint. So now we have the Receiver Transition Advisory Board that's in place, and that's a state board that still oversees a lot of what goes on in the city of Flint. Now, it's supposed to be for financial decisions only. And if you really look at what the emergency manager was supposed to do, it was supposed to be financial decisions, but they came in and did day-to-day operations and just ran everything for the city. So we are not under complete home rule at this point.
Well, that's why I wanted to get to it, because obviously, you know, you're the mayor. I'm not asking you to attack anyone, but I hear in the corporate media, our democracy is under attack with Russia and all these things. But like, people elected you or the city council. You make decisions, they make decisions. And I was just at this board yesterday.
Right.
I mean, you have to go before this board.
Go before them. So even once I make a decision and it goes before council, it still goes to this oversight board, and they are supposed to have the final say-so in what happens.
So let's keep it real.
Yeah.
That's pretty difficult. That's pretty difficult. Essentially, Rick Snyder is the mayor of Flint. So not to insult you, I'm just curious your thought.
I understand what you're saying. You're saying that we still are not autonomous.
Yes.
And that's a problem. And we're not autonomous at this point. And that's been a lot of the issues and challenges that I've been facing since being in this role as mayor.
And I want to ask you, because a lot of people around the country, they hear headlines like 8,000 homes are going to have liens on them. I mean, I'll just read real quick. I'll read real quick. Interim Chief Financial Officer David Sabuda wrote on June 22nd, rolling eligible delinquent water and sewer amounts, delinquent 6 months or more from customer water sewer accounts to customer tax bills is allowable under MCL section 123.162. I won't bore the audience. To the layman, whether you have control or not, why are these people even paying the water bill at this point if it has not been declared unilaterally, federal or state, the water is 100% safe to drink?
Okay, I have two things I want to address in there, because one was the liens that went over. And what I wanted people to understand, and I don't think a lot of people did, was that was a law that had been put in place for 40-something years. And it was a law that had been put in place by the council that was in place then. And one of the things I don't think they or anybody else ever anticipated was, you know, the water crisis. So that was something that had been done every single year. Well, the previous year I was able to get out of not doing that, because I was able to get credits from the governor. That's when we had the, you know, the water credits. So we didn't have to do that. But then the water credits ended. And so everything went back to normal. So it was really interesting, because I remember when it came up and they said this is what I was doing, I was thinking, well, no, I'm enacting the law that's put in place, because if I don't, I'm in trouble. But what I wanted to do was I notified council that, you know, this is something that you have the power to change. And that's what a lot of people don't know, is that was something that the legislative body put in place. So I took it to them. In fact, I had the city administrator and Sabuda take the ordinance to them to show them you have the power to change this. And so then they put the moratorium in place. And I was supportive of the moratorium because we didn't want that to happen. So that was what we were fighting for. That was the one. The other one, I'm glad you asked about that too, because why are we paying for water? Because, you know, I do want to say that we've made progress, but we're not where we want to be, because we're still on bottled water and we're still on filtered water. And we're on there, you know, we've been doing this construction. We're in 10 different areas of the city, so we still have to protect ourselves. And that's why we have to stay on bottled and filtered water until we get through this. And we're saying this is this year and 2 years after that. And I'm really in a bad spot because, you know, I went back to ask for some more credits and couldn't get them. And if we don't pay for what's going on, I'm in a position where I don't have money to pay the bill, because we still get a bill every month that's between $1.2 and $1.4 million. And so I have to have the funds to pay the bill. And the dilemma it puts me in is, if I don't, who comes back in full force? The emergency manager. And so that's been the issue. And that's the other reason that I really believe that the water, the distribution sites need to stay open. You know, they need to stay open, and that's something that's scheduled to end in September. And that doesn't really make sense when, even though I know it was part of the settlement agreement, it doesn't make sense that we would end that when we're still in this situation. So that's where I am. It's like, okay, do I say we don't pay, even though, you know, I believe there are certain things we shouldn't have to do, and there are certain things we still deserve as a result of what happened. But if I don't, I know I'm not paying the bills, and then the emergency manager comes back in. And so we've been given, like, okay, here's two bad hands. Which one is the worst? So which one do you do? And that's what it is. And I really wish, like, even when I went down to meet with the governor about, you know, to get the credits, because that would have helped us. And I came back, I feel like, empty-handed, because he said no to the continuation of the credits. It sure would have been nice if some of the other elected officials had said, I'm going to go back with you and let's fight this thing together. But none of that happened. And so it's really interesting to me that people want to criticize me for that, but nobody said, let's go back and fight this fight together. Nobody from city council said, we're going to go with you. Nobody, none of the state representatives, the state senator, no other elected official said, Mayor, let's go back down there and see if we can do this with some added ammunition. So that's one of the, it's a challenge, because there's just been criticism about it. And I thought, well, you know, I went down there, I got them before, but I can't keep doing the fight by myself. And so it would be really nice if people would come and help and be part of, you know, a larger voice on making sure we can at least try to get some of these things.
I want to ask you just like broader.
Okay.
Because it seems to me, and the beauty of the Young Turks, I don't stand here like a robot, you know, let me just tell you the facts. As a journalist, I don't think you should be neutral to poisoning or injustice or any of that. Like, when I read things like, no disrespect to Sabuda or anybody else, but when I read things like this, just talking about this law, and when I read things like, oh, well, we put in the tax credits, it's kind of like they're operating under normal business circumstances, and it's not in an extraordinary situation, frankly, brought on by the state. So that is something people don't understand, and I think they want to know what you think. You obviously have to work with the governor, you have to work with the state, but shouldn't there be, I mean, I have been here 8 times the last year. I meet people every time that are getting sick or have been sick. Isn't this an extraordinary situation?
Extraordinary situation, and that was why, I don't know if, I'm trying to remember which meeting it was at, but it was at one of the RTAB meetings, where they can come in and override decisions that are made, and they wanted the liens to continue. They wanted us to send those bills over there. And that was something that I said, I can't do it. You know, I'm not going to do it. Because these aren't regular circumstances. These are extraordinary circumstances. And that's why I said, I even think when they put that law in place, nobody ever anticipated something like this happening. But since we're still in it, you know, we need to deal with things in a different fashion. Even with, like I said, you know, in the lawsuit, the settlement says that the water pods close, and everybody's saying, and you all knew that. I said, yeah, we knew, but you might get out of 10 of the things you want, maybe you only get 5 of them or 6 of them. So we didn't get everything we wanted, but it doesn't mean that I agree with it either. And that was one of the things that I also wanted to, talk about was I've said I think the water pods should stay open while we're going through this, because these are extraordinary circumstances, and it doesn't make sense to me why they're closing, because we haven't gotten through this yet. Like I said, we're not going to be through this until we get those lead service lines replaced. And while, I'm excited because we're ahead of schedule on the number of lead service lines that we were replacing, and I hope that continues, but until we get completely through the process, they ought to stay open.
And would you like to see, as soon as possible, the disbanding of this RTAB? Because I'll give you an example.
Well, I never wanted the RTAB. I wanted it to be gone a long time ago when I was asking for home rule.
Right. Because I'll give you an example. It might seem very crass for me to say, but I'm just going to quote. I did a town hall here at Woodside Church a few months ago, and a Flint resident said, I kind of feel like I'm a rape victim, and the rapist is like overseeing my rape kit.
Right.
And it doesn't make sense why the state. Maybe it was negligence, gross negligence. There's no proof yet that it was intentional in any means.
Right.
But why would the state and the MDEQ, people have a hard time trusting the lead numbers. There's a lot of concern over bacteria. I could try to pronounce a lot of these things. I'm not a doctor, but you have chloroform being found. You have Pseudomonas aeruginosa, Delphtia. E. coli, Legionnaires, the list goes on. The EPA, when I've asked them, they kind of bury their head in the sand. MDEQ don't respond to me. There's been independent water testing. People in showers now have their eyes are burning. They have rashes. I've talked to people with ongoing nosebleeds. They don't know what it's coming from, but they're only getting this talk of lead, and the corporate media kind of just regurgitates what the EPA tells them. It's under the allowable limit for lead, but there's also concerns about, well, how are they testing the homes? It seems like they're only testing the sink water on cold. How are people supposed to trust the statements now and later?
It's hard to, and that was why we wanted to put so many other pieces to this puzzle in place, because we knew, and that was one of the things we said from the beginning, the trust has been broken, and people don't trust MDEQ, and people have issues and mistrust with EPA. And that's why it was important to have some independent testers or investigators, whichever word you want to use, be part of it, because we said the only way people are going to trust them is if other individuals or other agencies can corroborate the findings that they get. If somebody else from the outside says, okay, well, we got the same results as MDEQ and EPA, and that's what we were going for, and that's what we've told them from the very beginning. And, that was why it was so important for us to have our own public health person, a chief public health advisor at the table speaking on behalf of Flint and posing these questions and concerns to the people, because we didn't trust what was in place as far as this public health crisis, because that's what it was. We talked about an infrastructure crisis and a public health crisis as well. And so it was important for us to have our own voice and our own person going to these meetings and representing us and asking, those questions that we hear, that you hear people asking. And what's really interesting about that was because we had to prove the need for that position. We had to prove the need. We were able to do it, but people were, when I first said it would be nice if we had our own public health person speaking on behalf and representing us. We had to show that we had a need for that, and we were able to do that actually through the Obama administration when he sent people here, and they stayed here for 6 months, and they said, you do have a need for this kind of position, and we really want to build that up. We should have more than just a chief public health advisor. She has a student that is with us as well, but that is something that is so important, and there are so many issues and concerns in the area of public health that we knew that needed to be be a complete department. So now the Ford Foundation stepped up and funded one position for us, and we're hoping to get 2 more people under her because there's just so much going on, and it's really too much for just one person to be able to, address and handle. But that was one of the things that, when I talked about our staff being decimated by an emergency manager, that was a position that wasn't even here before. And so that's why I thought it was important for us to have that person at the table. And we've had Dr. Pugh with us since October of last year. So it hasn't even been a year that she's been here with us. But she's been able to start looking at some of those things. And even when we were trying to get information out, there were some things that she went out and did and had some radio kinds of community conversations to get more information to address that. But, I agree with you. It's a problem. It's a problem. But that was why we put that in place, and we want to put more in place because we don't trust all of those kinds of findings, and we know we need more than just those 2 entities giving us the information.
So specifically on bacterial concerns, I mean, obviously you're not a medical expert,
Right.
but as the leader of the city, should residents should residents have no fear that there's no bacteria?
It's hard to have no fear when you're talking about the water.
I just want to add, especially with the filters. They'd be getting these like $20 filters. It stops lead.
Stop all of these other things. And you're right. I mean, I'm not the person to address that. But that's what we have her doing, is asking those kinds of questions, because as we get, like, we're going to get a new round of test results in the near future. I'm thinking we're probably going to get them next week. And I'm anxious to see what they're going to show, what kind of results they're going to show, because that's what we're waiting for. That's what we've been waiting for. And this is the time when we know that bacteria grows. It's hot out right now. And so we're anxiously awaiting to see what it's going to say. I'm always hoping for good results, but we've got to be real with this and just wait and see, and then make some decisions based on what we find. Because I'm still under the thought that what if everything came back good? I still think the water distribution sites need to stay open until we get through this. So we're going to see.
But also, I just have a broader question, which has nothing to do with you, because you're not the state. You're not the state. But how is it that the state can tell people, it's fine to shower and bathe when there's no shower and bathing standards? Like the EPA doesn't have shower and bathing standards, so it's kind of like.
And that's a tough one, because, and you know what, I'm tell you this, I don't know, but right from the beginning, I know one of the things we asked for, and it's starting to happen a little bit more now, was shower filters. We wanted filters for the showers because that was a concern. And that was something, like I said, we asked for it, we didn't get it. But we put the ask out there to private agencies and individuals who started sending them to give people some more comfort and some more confidence and some relief. But that was one of the things we asked for right from the beginning was, while we're doing regular filters for your sink, can't we get them for the showers? Because I believe then and now that we deserve that as well.
I'm not going to couch it with a lot of people.
What?
I think this is backwards. I'd like to know what you think. Why is it that the governor and the state are closing down water pods, ending tax credits, but the state residents and the city of Flint residents are paying for his lawyers, paying for the other people who have been charged lawyers? Reports have his actual lawyer fees to taxpayers have paid over $5 million, and in total for everybody $12 million. Not trying to get you in trouble, but that seems backwards to most people.
Right. And I can't give you the answers for all of that, because some of it, I guess, that's how it is, and that's the luxury you get when you're in that position.
But is it right? Is it right?
But you know what? I don't think that all of this is right. One of the things we've been doing is asking for some of those attorney fees, because we've had to spend money, and we should not have to spend money for some of these attorneys that we've had to pay fees to. And so that's something else we've been working on, is you need to give us the money for this, the reimbursement for this, because it's not fair to us. We are in a financial situation, and that's not how we should have to spend our money at all.
But you understand why people, I'm sure a lot of people watching are like, what? They're paying his lawyer fees? You understand why people would be concerned about that?
Oh, yeah, I understand. I understand that completely. And it's interesting. It's just like people have asked, why do I meet with the governor? But he's the governor, and right now he's the one in charge and has the access to the resources that we need and that, some of us have been fighting for. It's been difficult because a lot of times I felt like I've been doing this fight alone. Like I said, when it comes to trying to move certain things forward, it's been very difficult because I haven't had much support from the city council. I've got about one vote there in trying to move some things forward when it comes to building capacity for the city. That's been a fight. When it comes to meeting with the governor and talking about certain things, that's been a fight. When it's been trying to get this water recommendation moved forward, that's been a fight. And some of those things, I thought if we could all fight together on the same cause, we could have even more accomplished. And that's been a frustration of mine.
And let's look to the future. Okay. Obviously, the water source, what's it going to be, has been a big discussion point. Mm-hmm. Originally, it was all thought to be going to the Karagandhi Water Authority. They could call it whatever they'd like. I think most experts have described it as a privatized water pipeline, but that's a different discussion for a different day. You've suggested to stay on the Great Lakes Water Authority, previously Detroit's Water and Sewage, and it seems that the state originally wanted the KWA, but now there's a mad dash. There's been pressure on the city council to sign this agreement. There was a lawsuit filed last week from the Michigan Department of Environmental Quality against the city of Flint. A resident, Claire McClinton, I interviewed yesterday, said, "Are you kidding me? They're going to sue." Can you explain your rationale why they should be staying on Great Lakes Water Authority, but also what's the rush? Because it seems like
it's not a rush. Right. And so I want to clear that up because people have said it's a rush. It's not a rush. When I got in office, people didn't want KWA. That was one of the first things people screamed about was we don't want to go to KWA. We feel like we've been forced there. They sold our pipe. We don't have that. We don't have a backup source. We have issues with public health, and people have put finances over public safety. And it went on and on and on. We didn't even have access to a water assistance program. Now, what we've been able to put in place with some private donations is a semi-water assistance program, but once that money is gone, the money is gone. So I heard what you said, and I don't mean you, but what people said. We don't want KWA. They got rid of our pipe. The emergency manager did all these things. And I remember when I first got here, we didn't think that deal could be undone. And in fact, that 30-year lease agreement was put in place before I got here, and it was a 30-year lease arrangement for $7 million a year plus the 1.2 to 1.4 million that we pay every single month. So I think people didn't believe I could get us out of it, and we put a team together of it wasn't just me, but we had to have the state there, and we had to have the county there, and the MDEQ and EPA, and I'm sure I'm forgetting some people that were Great Lakes that were part of this, but we didn't like the deal. We were angry about it because we did feel like it was an emergency manager decision, that our hand was forced. You sold our pipe. Who would ever sell your revenue source, your biggest asset? Why would you get rid of that? And so we were able to get some good things out of this deal because our first priority was public health. And we did not want to switch water sources again because then you start completely over, and then you have all of those fears and anxieties about, we've gotten the water quality better. Why do we want to start back here again? So public health was the first priority, and it made sense to stay. Then we looked at finances, and we got out of paying that $7 million a year because we don't have any money. Let's just be real. We don't have any money. So to get that debt off our backs was a great thing for us. It gave us access to that water relief assistance program. And so that's something that's permanently in place that the residents would have. It gave us, we had already put money into the KWA, so it gives us a revenue stream to talk about selling some water. If you needed raw water, we have some that we can sell and start bringing some additional revenue in. We never had a backup source, so we finally got a backup source. So the longer we put that off, we have to keep paying into that $7 million. We're paying close to $600,000, every month if we don't make that switch. We don't have that, you know, so we're paying for 2 water sources right now, and we get out of that with the Great Lakes. We get out of that. And, you know, and then they say, well, we don't want a 30-year deal. Well, you'd wanted one before that cost you a whole lot more. So don't come and say that I've done this 30-year deal. That was done before me by mayor and city council. Not all of the city council, but some of them, they put that deal in place. So now all of a sudden it's a bad deal, but it cost us much less. So, you know, I'm not going to sit here and let them put that blame on me. And even when we were in negotiations, one of the things we talked about was, could we get a 10-year deal? Could we get a 15-year deal? But they weren't doing those. And when we looked at the contracts that were in place for other municipalities, they were all 30-year deals, and they thought that was the best way for them to control the cost of the water. But here's the other thing, you know, when we talk about water rates and, you know, the cost, one of the things that we were hoping for with this deal was once it went through, we had had conversation with General Motors. If the deal went through, they were looking to come back as a customer to Flint. With getting rid of the $7 million a year payment and having General Motors back as a customer, that was going to be another way for us to reduce water costs. That's what we wanted to look at. Was
They were going to use the water, General Motors.
Yes, okay. But they wanted the recommendation to go through. So those were some of the things we had, you know, conversation about is, oh, there's another way for us to reduce the cost of water if we can get rid of this $7 million bill and then bring General Motors on as a customer, have them come back as a customer. So it was good for all of those reasons.
Well, I think a lot of residents I've spoken to, you know, they have concerns usually like, this smells fishy. Someone stands to make some money here that shouldn't be making some money. A lot of people have asked, like, what is the Great Lakes Water Authority? Is it truly public? Or is there is it privatized at all? Because in reading the contract, it seems that they're going to get extra money from KWA, extra water from KWA to then sell to other municipalities.
They may, but you know what? If somebody comes in and they have a cake that's too big for me and you get a piece, lucky you. All I could do was be worried about what was in the best interest of the city of Flint. If somebody else down the line benefits, that's not my issue. My responsibility is to get the best deal for the people here, and that was my focus. Somebody said, yeah, well, the KWA still gets their $7 million. I'm like, I don't care. We're not paying it. You know, if the person over there wants to pay that bill, let them pay it, but it's off of us. And so that was what I had to stay focused on, wasn't the fluff that others got. All I know about are the bills that we're incurring and the expense and the debt we were able to get from under if this goes forward.
Interesting, when you mentioned cake, you looked at my growing gut.
I did not.
2 more questions.
What?
2 more questions. One, there was a town hall April 20th here. I was one of the only national reporters here. You know, residents got kind of loud. Obviously, we know with lead and other things, mood swings, things like that. There were arrests made. Genesee County, the prosecutor there, Flint's part of Genesee County.
Yes, we are.
Yes, the prosecutor there said we're not going to charge anybody, but Flint still has the opportunity, the possibility of charging. I know the standard answer would be like, well, that's up to my police department.
Right.
You were there. Do you think these 6 residents who still technically could be charged by the city, do you think we should just kind of like, all right, residents are upset, frustrated, and as long as they're not violent, there shouldn't be that kind of treatment?
I am going to give you part of the answer that you just said. I do leave that. I don't get involved in those kinds of decisions. I do let the chief of police make his own decisions, and that was why I hired him, because that's his lane and I stay in mine. But one of the things we've noticed is it doesn't matter if it was at the church or if it was upstairs in city council. We have people that get rowdy all the time and act disrespectful, and they've gotten taken out by the police officers. And it's really interesting that people have complained about that situation, but they always want them upstairs at city council where they clown and misbehave. So we can't have 2 different standards. People have even said, well, why'd you have it in a church? Well, it's interesting because when this water crisis started, that's where all the meetings were. They were always at the church. And the only time it was ever an issue was that last meeting. So we've had town halls at churches. We've had it at North Bank Center. We've had it at senior centers. So we have it all throughout the community, trying to make it easy access. But those were the same standards that were put in place that we have at city council meetings. So the expectations weren't different.
Well, you kind of lose me at getting rowdy and things like that, because, of course, if somebody is getting to the point of belligerence and threats, they should be right.
I wasn't outside in the hallway to see everything that happened. I couldn't move that day because my foot was on the thing. So I didn't really see everything that happened out there. But I do, one of the things I have to say is that our chief of police and our police department have made good decisions, and they have, other than that issue, the people in the community really like them. They respect them. They look to them to maintain peace and order, and that's what they've done. And I have to give them credit, because when you look at everything that's happened in the city of Flint, it's really surprising that more has not happened. And I think I have to give that to the police chief and the staff that have been able to maintain that law and order, and that's what we look for them to do.
I think with not just that night, but in general, people are looking for a two-way street, because I think when residents are rightly frustrated, sick, dealing with can't get medical coverage, things like that, when you walk into a church, you see 3 cops in the back, a cop in the front holding guns. You have the police chief in the beginning say, "I'm not messing around." It kind of could come off a little intimidating.
Let me tell you what, that happened when we were at another town hall meeting. I don't know if you were there. It was one at the North Bank where people got really, really rowdy, and the police had to step in and maintain some order. And so that was why we had to start it off that way, because that was the very next town hall after we had some issues at North Bank Center. So I think, if you don't have that whole story, it may look out of context as to why did it start this way and why were they like this. But there was an incident at the previous one. But we do understand people being frustrated, because this has been too long. We shouldn't even be in this situation, and we shouldn't have to deal with this situation. And that's why it's not business as usual, and it shouldn't be. And that's what we've talked about. And I guess sometimes people that don't have to live it day in and day out like we do, that get to go back to Lansing and other places, I don't know, they don't understand that this isn't business as usual, and this is a community that's been hurt mentally, emotionally, physically, and we need to handle things in a whole different manner.
Right. And I think people are looking for the police department to see that too and empathize and all that. Last question. I'm a white dude. I have not dealt with what you've dealt with in your life probably, but I have eyes, and I don't see these things happening in Ann Arbor. I don't see these things happening on the Upper West Side of Manhattan. And if they do happen in wealthier areas where people look like me, the response has been quite different. I don't like to toss around racism, but that's what I see here. I see whether, and there's a lot of poor white people here, by the way. So it's not just
it's race and it's class, and that's what we've talked about. That this one of the other things we've always talked about is this being an environmental injustice that's happened here in the city of Flint. And I can't think of it, but the group that just came in and said this was an issue of race. They just said this. They presented this information, and they presented it at the council meeting the other night. And so it was nice that, because sometimes somebody else has to come in to validate what we know is happening. And for that commission to come in and do that, it was good. They told us, it's like, well, yeah, we already know this, but we're glad that you all could come in and document this, and we'll see how far it takes us. But that's one of the things we've always talked about, is this being a predominantly African-American community, this being an issue of social class, and the injustices that go on and that happen when you have a majority, minority, whatever that minority is, and when you have issues of class and high unemployment. Those are the things that happen, and that's what we have to continue to bring to light. So I'm glad you said it.
I also think that this didn't just randomly happen. There's been a controlled demolition of places like Flint for the last 30 years.
Right.
You look at the trade deals, allowing places like General Motors to go, rezoning laws, a lot of gentrification efforts. So it seems like the conditions here.
There was a plan in place. There was a plan in place, and that's why it's so important that we need to stop all of this fighting. Because as we're fighting, our eye is taken off of what the real deal is, and we're taking off focus, or that's what they're trying to get us to do, and we'll look up and everything is gone. And right now we have a window of opportunity to make some things happen, and so we really should be all working together and focused on getting as many of those opportunities as we can while it's still there. But clearly there was a plan in place. I do believe that. I do believe that.
And I lied. Last question.
Okay,
I have to ask. There is a recall petition out there. You know, I think hopefully a lot of people now know. I thought it was my duty to tell you it's not completely in her control. That doesn't mean you're perfect either. What's your response to the recall effort? Do you feel that's justified?
No. You know what, and that's what I talk about. There were people that already had plans in place that once that year was up, because you can't recall in the first year or the last year. And they already told me once my year is up, the very next day they started filing recall language. And so it was done. It took them 4 times to get it. So, no, I think it's nitpicking, and I think the people that are doing it are trying to, you know, they say it's about trash. Let's talk about trash for a minute, because when we first got into this, we were paying $21 million a year. We're paying 17 now. So they say they want to recall me for saving $4 million. Does that make sense to you? So we know it wasn't about that. That's their excuse. But there were people that didn't want me or people that look like me, whether we talk about blacks or women, at the table. And I think that's a lot of it. And I remember that even one of the pastors came forward and told me that someone of another race was trying to pay them to file recall language. And it finally went through. So this is something they've been trying to do as soon as I got into office. And I think another thing that it has to do with is nobody thought I was going to be able to get this money coming into to the city of Flint. And once this money started flowing in, it's like, oh, we really got to get her out of office now. So let's kick her out for saving the taxpayers $4 million and see if we can take it back over.
And a yes or no, have you, since President Trump's been president, spoken with him?
Once.
And how was that?
It was brief. I'm looking for a second meeting.
All right. Thank you very much for taking the time. And audience, I hope you enjoyed this. You could look in the headline. We have, I think, 100 videos already from our 8 times here. And we'll keep coming back until there's some justice and clarity and clean water. Thanks for watching.